Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Carmen Mazzara. I serve as Executive Director of APSIA, the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. We are the community for graduate schools worldwide that specialize in international affairs, but we're also the very proud home of the Public and International Service Advisor Network for all of you who serve undergrads so well. We're so glad to welcome you to another one of our PISA Advisor briefings, this time talking about the fantastic opportunity presented by the Boren Scholarship. So we're delighted, Michael, that you were able to join us and share more about the program with our advisors. I will invite everybody who's comfortable to turn on their camera. If you have any technical problems, please feel free to DM me or my amazing colleague, Brittany Chor. If you have any questions about the program or things you want to pick Michael's brain on to make your students as competitive as possible, please feel free to put those publicly in the chat or also send them to me, and we'll make sure we get you all the ammunition you need to turn out some fantastic Boren candidates. So with that, I also want to note this presentation is being recorded and will live on APSIA's YouTube page afterwards. So if you miss anything or want to revisit anything, that content will be there and available to you. We have a number of other webinars coming up that I will advertise at the end of our session, but please do keep an eye on your email for lots of other great PISA related content as a companion to what we know is going to be a great conversation about Boren. So with that, Michael, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out, if you have questions, feel free to jump in or throw them on the chat window. Generally speaking, this goes better if people ask questions, and I don't mind how specific they get. Sometimes your specific question will help somebody else, so feel free to do that. This is just a quick introduction to the Boren Award. Those of you who are more familiar with it, this may not have exactly the amount of information that I would give in for example, my campus rep workshop, which is 2 hours long. But again, that's why I want you to ask questions. The Boren Scholarship and Fellowship is a product of the Department of Defense. It is similar to the Department of State programs like Fulbright, Gilman, Critical Language Scholarship, where we have eligibility requirements because this is a U.S. tax-funded program. The citizenship is a must. You have to be a U.S. citizen at least by the time of the deadline, which is going to be February 1st, 2023. We do not accept permanent residents or dreamers, so this is something just to keep in mind. We do ask, it is necessary for the student to maintain their student status at the school they're applying from. So if a student is a freshman, sophomore, or junior, this isn't going to be an issue. If a student is a graduating senior, this could come into play. So if I have a student, for example, who is looking at graduating May 2023 and wants to apply to Boren and isn't sure whether they should apply as a scholar or a fellow, there are a couple of questions that come up. If they're serious about graduating and they are expecting to go to graduate school in the fall of 2023, they should be applying for the Boren Fellowship. I generally recommend students stay a scholar if they can and ask the school if it would be okay to push their graduation date back. Every school is a little different. Some, this is just a matter of shuffling papers. For some, this is a Herculean task and not able to be accomplished. Dartmouth, for example, is one that I'm thinking of. So that is something that it depends on the student, depends on the answer. The reason why I don't recommend graduating seniors applying to the fellowship, unless they are going to the same school for graduate school. So if they're a University of Maryland student going to University of Maryland again for the graduate program, maybe they're already familiar with their professors, and those professors can write. Basically, it's feasibility is the issue. If I'm reading applications from a graduating senior for the fellowship, I may be wondering to myself, are they really going to be able to do what they're saying if they haven't even started their program yet? So feasibility really throws a wrench into their application. So it's just something I recommend to avoid if they can. And you also have to maintain, you also have to be going to a region of the world that Boren goes to. This program is focused on going to less commonly traveled to countries, studying less commonly taught languages. So we kind of X out all the I put popular in quotes because only 12% of students study abroad anyway. So, but the idea is we don't go to Western Europe, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. And finally, if you're a dual citizen, I just got a question about this today from a campus rep. If you're a dual citizen of the country the student wants to go to, if the student is a dual citizen, my sons are both Colombian and American citizens, they would not be able to go to Colombia on a Boren. They have their passports. We signed the paperwork with the consulate, so they are officially Colombian. So that is no longer able to go on the Boren. If you have a student who is a citizen because of birthright, for example, let's say their parents are from Jordan, and Jordan would consider them citizens, but the parents never went and filed any paperwork. The student's never been to Jordan. They weren't born in Jordan. There's no paperwork tying them to Jordan. That is probably a situation where the student can still apply and they're not going to run into any issues. If you have a question like that, just like this campus rep did today, send it to me and I will be happy to take a look at that. The scholarship and fellowship are very similar when it comes to the amount of funding we give out. It is $25,000 we cap out for overseas funding from anywhere between 6 and 12 months, and $12,500 for one semester programs. We do allow STEM students in undergrad to apply for an 8 to an 11-week program. This slide can be misleading for some STEM students. I don't want them to think they can only apply for summer. They are eligible to apply up to 52 weeks. Some STEM students don't have the ability or the flexibility in their academic schedule to do a program in fall or spring because of requirements. So that's why we have this to begin with. Whether a student does an 8-week program in undergrad for the scholarship or a 52-week program, there is a federal service agreement for 12 months that doesn't change. So if a student does 8 weeks on the Boren, they still owe the federal government 12 months of service. If they do a 52-week, they owe a 12-month service. So this is the same for Boren and fellows. The biggest difference with the fellows is that we offer first, we don't offer that STEM initiative. You have to do at least 12 weeks on the fellowship. But we also offer a domestic funding that we do not offer to the scholars for the graduate students. So if a graduate student is interested in the Boren Fellowship and they are interested in taking a language class before they go overseas and having Boren pay for it, it would be summer 2023. They could do it at their home institution, or they could do it anywhere in the U.S. So they could go to Middlebury if they want to spend all their money. They could go to Miss in Monterey. There are a lot of opportunities around the country to do this. They can apply for up to $12,000 for that. That said, we can't go over $30,000 for their total award. So if they do a domestic and overseas component, we cap out at 30. So if they take all $12,000, they are left with only $18,000 to use overseas, assuming they're overseas longer than 25 weeks. So it gets a little weird. The math gets a little strange. If a Boren fellow wants to do a domestic component, they have to go overseas in the fall by the end of September. And there is no domestic only program for Boren fellows. So they can't just apply for domestic funding. That was something we did 20 years ago, but we don't do it anymore. So just in case you were, wait a minute, I thought we did that. It was a long time ago. I would say if we look at all Boren Fellowship applications, only half ask for domestic funding. It is not something that makes somebody necessarily more competitive. I would say the longer a student is overseas, the more competitive they are, though. So if a student is applying for one of the basically self-create programs that they come to, they go to their study abroad office or they develop themselves, whether they're a scholar or a fellow, longer is better. The committee, that's the first thing that they look at. So if a student can stay 25 to 52 weeks, that's going to help them in the application process. It will make them more competitive. It is not something that we hold STEM students to the same level, at least on the scholarship. So if a STEM student is doing a summer or only one semester long program, we do not consider that a negative for STEM students only. Everybody else, you can apply for a one semester program as a political science major, but that is an elephant in the room when the committee is like, why are they only doing one semester? There could be very good reasons why they're doing one semester. make sure that it's mentioned in the application. I'm doing one semester because I have responsibilities at school that I need to be back for spring 2024. So whatever it is, if you say nothing, the committee is left to wonder why you're doing such a short program when everybody else seems to be doing longer programs, and it makes you less competitive. I don't see any questions about that so far. All right. Oh, I got one. So I'm just going to read this. Apologies. In regards to not supported countries, there are exemptions for vulnerable or endangered languages like Welsh. So for those, not for us. So we do not offer Welsh or Irish or Gaelic because it's in a region of the world we don't go to. There are a lot of indigenous languages that we will approve. All of the indigenous languages in Africa, for example, are considered priorities or preference on the program. And although indigenous languages in Latin America are not technically preferred, students who apply to those tend to do well on our committees. They tend to like those applications. For example, we have somebody studying Malay right now in not Malay, they're studying Mayan in Mexico. I have somebody studying Quechua in Peru, and I think I have 2 people studying an indigenous language in Paraguay, and I cannot remember what the languages that saved my life, but there are 2 of them, and we've never had this language studied before on Boren, and it's amazing that we have 2 in the same year, considering this is our 28th year sending people overseas. It's good to see. For the most part, though, if it's in a region that is grayed out on this map, we do not go there. We're not allowed to send anybody there. In the application process, there's no drop down for Australia and New Zealand, even if you want to study Maori. It is just not available. If it is spoken on one of the islands, and when they get so small, you can't really see what colors those are. When in doubt, if it's a country that you can't really tell from this map, send me an email. I'm happy to go look it up, and I can say, hey, it looks like we did actually have somebody go there in 2010 or something like that, or nope, nobody's ever gone there. It is not eligible. The easiest way to see if you can even apply is in our drop-down menu. If it doesn't exist, then you probably can't apply for it. So that is one. That's not 100%. My application, it's Slate. If you guys work with Fulbright and Gilman, maybe you have experience with Slate. But it can be a little persnickety. So as I mentioned, preferences on this program, duration abroad is the number 1, number 2 and 3 are language and country. This is going to be a little tricky depending on the country. So as you can see on the map, we have different colors here. The green countries, this is from 2021. I almost said 2001. It's not that old. 2021. Where the countries that were green were considered green is go, green is good. These are countries that are preferred on the Boren and also safe enough to send people, at least as of the application deadline in 2021/2022. That is changed a little bit. Belarus and Ukraine would be blue countries right now, of course. All the other countries are remaining the same. The green countries are preferred and safe, save Ukraine and Belarus. But the blue countries are preferred on the program, but are too dangerous to send students. At least they were too dangerous as of 2021/2022. So countries like Russia, Egypt, and Turkey, probably the 3 most popular countries we've had Boren in the past go. Some of those countries have been off limits for a long time. We stopped going to Egypt after the Muslim Brotherhood fell. We've stopped going to Russia about 7 or 8 years ago. We stopped going to Turkey after they had that crackdown on academics. Turkey and Egypt perhaps would be the ones I would say were possible to come back in 2023. I've been saying that for a couple of years, and right before we make that decision, something horrible happens in Cairo or something, or Erdogan says something ridiculous. It is depending, you can apply to any of these blue countries, but you're going to have an alternative program in your application. I think the committee tends to look down on people who apply to the blue countries in general, because they're like, wait a minute, you were told this is not likely to be successful. Why are you applying? I'd rather somebody apply to a green country first. But sometimes the student has a really good reason about why they want to study in in Turkey, and they'll make a very strong argument for it. And the committee may be great. You made that great argument. I see you have this alternative program in Azerbaijan and you put detail into that. I'm happy promoting you, because we will tell the committee, hey, if you like them and you like their argument for Turkey, and you're not put off by the fact that it was blue, go ahead. You can recommend them for the award. If Turkey is still off limits in 2023, we will just say, hey, good news, bad news, you got the Boren. We can't send you to Turkey, but if you're still interested, you can do the alternate program in Azerbaijan. This is pretty much what we did throughout the COVID years, which sounds like a David Bowie song. This is going to be a option. This is why we basically switched. And last year we started asking everybody who applies to our 3 most popular languages, Arabic, Mandarin, and Russian, to have an alternative program in their application, even if they're all green countries. So if somebody is applying to China, which is again green on our map, although we haven't been able to send anybody to China, it's not necessarily a safety issue. It's more of China keeps shutting down cities, and we are not comfortable sending students there right now. So we've been sending everybody to Taiwan. We want that kind of flexibility when it comes to awarding. So this is why we've added these languages. All of these languages have multiple countries that speak that language. So if a student applies to Taiwan, they need China, Singapore, Malaysia to be their alternate. If somebody's applying to Kazakhstan, they need Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Estonia, Latvia, something like that as their alternate. And for Arabic, there are a lot of options. The biggest Arabic speaking, the most popular Arabic country right now for Boren used to be Egypt. Now it's Jordan. Number 2 is Morocco, and number 3 is Oman. So, any of those 3 could be put into the application. We ask the student that they have a plan for both countries if they need an alternate. If a student picks Brazil, they don't need an alternate. It's a green country. It's not a language we ask for an alternate. It's not necessary for them to put like Mozambique or Angola as their alternate country. They just put Brazil. But for those that need alternative plans, they should be looking at language programs in both countries. That may be something they can do through the Study Abroad office. That may be something they have to get on Google to find. But that is going to be something that we ask them for. It's about 250 words. We realize that that's a little more work, but in general, if we're asking for an alternative country, it's because we usually end up using them, or there's a good chance we're going to have to use it. So we want to keep options there so the student can keep their award and be prepared for it. If at April 15th we say, hey, good news, you got the award. You wanted to go overseas in June. Now you have 6 weeks to find a new country because that country is off limits. We're trying to help with that process by having them already have one in mind. Long way of going through that. Field of study. The preferences are, and I think I probably should have kept doing my slideshow. I had stopped looking at it. Let me see if I get now. See, now my computer is angry that I didn't use it. There we go. Okay, I didn't have any others. The field of study, basically, if you are a student, and I was a theater major, so I was not in what's considered a preferred major for Boren Award. If I was interested in study abroad, learning the language, and federal employment, I don't care what your major is, you should be able to apply to this program and get it, because that's really what we're looking for. I think you may have, again, we talk about elephants in the room. If I am a dance, theater, English major, I'm probably going to need to explain a little more to the committee why somebody in my particular major is interested in federal work, but that can be done. Now, we fund 2 types of programs on the Boren. We have our Boren funded, Boren run programs, pardon me, the regional flagship language initiatives. We call these FLEAs, just because it's funny and it's easier to say. These FLEAs are in 4 different areas. We have our AFLE program, our SAFLE program, IFLE program, and our TERFLE program. These combine both domestic and overseas options. So what happens is, basically, if you apply for one of these FLEAs and you receive it, you are saying, we are saying you are going to have to take this 8-week program either at University of Florida or University of Wisconsin over the summer 2023, and then go overseas to a country for the fall. This can't be skipped. This can't be, tested out of. This is the requirement. And these are language intensive programs, roughly 60 hours or more a week of language. It is going to take up all of their time. This is not for the faint of heart. These programs they're small groups, they're small class sizes. We don't get a ton of applications for any of these countries, although I would say Tanzania, Swahili, and Tanzania and Swahili, French in Senegal, and Turkish in Azerbaijan are our most popular out of all of them. But we don't get a lot of applications for our Indonesian or our India program. So these are opportunities for students who are maybe looking for a competitive advantage. You can point them toward these, but they really have to understand they're getting into a world of a very, very intense language. Thank you for the link. I just saw that. So let's see. I'm going to go. I'm going to see what my next slide is. Before I go into the agencies, let me go a little more about the flagships. So one of the things I would say is that the AFLI program is at University of Florida in Gainesville for 8 weeks, summer 2023. Roughly, it starts mid-June or early June. And then you would go overseas to one of those countries, depending on the language you choose. The SAFLI, IFLI, and TERFLI are all out of University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that program, again, it depends on the program. Most of them end around the first week of December, the overseas program. So they end around late August in the summer program, and then you head over to those countries. Boren covers all of these fees. We cover the airfare and living expenses to Wisconsin and Florida. We cover, of course, the class costs. We cover the airfare, living expenses, and such for an insurance and all that for your overseas component as well. These programs are set up through American councils, through AIIS, depending on the country. We have found a lot of success in these programs. The AFLI program, we have 3 languages that are less, or 4 languages technically, that are less popular. Akan, Tree, Wolof, and Zulu don't get a lot of applications, and we don't get a lot of successful applications. So we end up not having enough folks on a year-to-year basis to justify having our own setup program. If you have a student or you're interested in studying in one of these, on an AFLI for one of these languages, you kind of have to combine, you have to do the summer program in Florida, but you have to find your own program in Africa for the fall. I am happy to say, I can't recommend anything because we're not allowed to do that, but I can always say where people have gone. So I said, I can't recommend this, but here's where people have studied Zulu in South Africa the last 3 or 4 years. Here's where people have studied Akan Tree in Ghana, or here's where people studied Wolof in Senegal. And the answer to that is it's the exact same place where everyone's studying French. But I'm here to help those kind of questions. If a student is interested if a student is interested in one of these languages, but they don't want to do this rigorous 60-hour, intensive program, they can apply for a program through the Study Abroad Office. They can, we call self-designed program. The FLEs really only cover 30% of the award money we give out. 70% are students going out and finding their own programs. They're going out to study abroad. Our most popular languages are not in the FLEs. They're the Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese. These programs are, of course, not FLEs because they're already popular. We have the FLEs there to try to drum up interest in these programs to get more applications. These other languages are going to be very important for us, of course, but the students have plenty of options there. So they're going to go to their study abroad office. They're going to find these programs online and say, okay, I found this program through CIS or maybe CIEE or American Councils. And here is the program that my school offers. Can Boren help pay for this? So I got a question. Why aren't many applications successful to the AFLI or the others? So it's not that we don't have successful applications, we have very few. So for example, I'll have about 100, 120 total AFLI applications out of 800 applications for a year, right? More than 70% will be applying just to French and Swahili. And now we're down to just handfuls of applications for Zulu. And just the way it is, I may only have 1 or 2 of those applications that are strong enough to support sending someone there. There's no quota on the number of folks. We don't have a problem filling 12 or 15, 13 people to go to Swahili, to go to Tanzania to learn Swahili, or Senegal to study French. I have plenty of students who have successful applications, who are qualified. I may not have more than 1 or 2 Zulu applications that ultimately are decided. So that's why we don't have, it's not, if we had the same numbers of people interested in Zulu, I wouldn't have, we probably have our own program. So that's why that is. I will say for our Turfly India, our Azerbaijan and India programs, we get under 30 applications for those. Actually, I don't think we've hit 20 applications yet for the Indonesian program. And we give out usually between 9 and 11 awards. So the success rate on that one is pretty strong. Again, if a student was just looking for a competitive advantage, I always recommend just go with the country you're interested in. I'd rather you do that than try to game the system. But if some students want to game the system, they can try. Please share where the Twi, Wolof, and Zulu students have gone for semester study. You're going to have to email me because I will then look it up and give you those names, because basically we have a database. I have to kind of go through their application, find out where they went, and I'm happy to do that, but that will take some time. But send me an email. All right, now. So I talked about, we do our FLEs, we have our self-design programs. Great. You've talked about this in your application. What makes us different than most awards, not just that we give out more money, but we have this 12-month service requirement, which is why it limits the number of total applications we get any given year. Most students, if they're not already scared about studying a language, aren't that keen on working for the federal government. So we end up with about 800 on a good year applications for the scholarship. We give out over 200 awards. That is something to think about. But we do ask the students to give the committee an idea where they want to work when they graduate. Students will have up to 3 years after they graduate, if they get the scholarship, to work for the federal government. They have a 12-month service agreement. They can do that in bits and bobs. They can do an internship while they're still a student before they graduate, as long as they do this post for it. Do like knock 3 months off their 12-month service that way. If they graduate, they can get a full-time paid job in the federal government. This is how most students fulfill their service. They apply to jobs to the DoD, DHS, DOS, IC, and other agencies around the country, around the government, that have national security ramifications. This is what students do, and this is what we're looking for in the application. We want a student not just to say, hey, I'm interested in working in the federal government. That's too vague. We want them to get more detail. Show us that long-term interest in federal work. It's a 12-month service agreement, but we're really looking for students who, and we say this on the website, so we're not hiding this. We're really looking for students who are interested in a career in federal work. So we want to see an application that supports that. How much research has the student done? We get a lot of applications that say, I want to be a foreign service officer. Well, great. Why? Or what's your track? Look at the cones. How do you want to navigate your future career in the FSO? And what are your options? What are you going to do while you're waiting to get into the foreign service, which is no easy task either. So these are the things that a committee is going to look for in an application. And again, 2 of our favorite words is flexibility and feasibility. Is it, the students that say, I want to be the ambassador of, Japan? Well, sure. It means you probably have to be a tech billionaire and back the right person to win the presidency, because that's generally how that works. But do you want to be a lifelong diplomat? Oh, we can handle that. We're all about that, right? So it depends on this, make sure their rose tinted glasses are a little focused on the event. Let's see. I have a good question. Let's see. I met with a representative from the NSA last week who shared that for students who have studied abroad, the process of getting top security clearance can be very difficult and take years. That is not true. Can you speak to this as it relates to students in the intelligence? So yes, it could take years, and rarely does. I would say we have we have somebody actually from, I believe she's also from NSA. She's an HR representative there who comes to talk to our students. we tell the students before they go, the students that are interested, and the students that are selected, we have a orientation, June 1st and 2nd next year will be the date, in DC. And one of the things we do among the security, presentation and others is say, these are the things you need to remember, because when you go for your security clearance, these are the questions you'll be asked. And these are the kind of relationships and connections they're going to want to know more about. Who you lived with if you're in a homestay family, or who your roommate was, things like that. They're not going to need every name of the person you bought your coffee from, but they're going to want this kind of information. And we go through a list just so you're prepared. And that when you do look for work in the IC or other places that require top secret or more clearance, that you'll have those answers. And they said on average, it only adds a few, it depends on how many countries you've been to, but on average, it only adds somewhere between 3 and 6 months of a background investigation. It's still time, it's still a chunk, but it is, I have not heard it can take years, although I'm sure it has for some folks. And again, if you have been to multiple countries and you have multiple, maybe you have also family members who are from different countries, that could also be an issue. Everything's a little different. But from most of my, I've been doing Boren since 2005. Most from my anecdotal experience of what I've heard, it's really just adding months, not years, to their background investigation. But that was a good question. Let's see. Oh, and then somebody just added a sweet link there to prepare for their clearance. Now, not every student is going to be keen to work for these agencies. It depends on your school. I went to, does anybody know the school in Vermont? I think it's SIT. I went there for the first time and I'm wearing my suit. I'm from DC. I'm talking about the intelligence community. I almost got run out of that campus, as they threw their Birkenstocks at me. Now, I have learned since to then instead talk about all of the other opportunities that are in the federal government that also relate to national security, that you can go from IC to the other end of the spectrum to Peace Corps. And there is a happy, and everywhere in between that has some national security, argument to be made. And this is something that I say, these are not considered depends on what the student's passion is. If I have a student who's passionate about working for the Peace Corps, I want them to write about that in their application, because they're going to write better. They're going to write, it's going to sound better to the committee's ears, because they've obviously been thinking, and this is what I find from a lot of Peace Corps volunteers or people who want to be Peace Corps volunteers. I get that passion and it comes out well on paper. I would also add, though, what are you going to do when you return from the Peace Corps? Again, the government, this award is looking for long-term interest in government service. I said this was a short presentation. I'm already 35 minutes in. What I would say is, what are you going to do after you get back from Peace Corps that could help your competitiveness? Peace Corps is easily going to cover your service agreement. It's 2 years. Your service agreement is only 12 months. Even if you do the scholarship and the fellowship, you're knocking both out. But the idea here is the committee wants to know what's your long-term, and a 19 or 20-year-old applying to this program may think 2 years is a long-term, investment in federal work, but the people reading their application are my age, and that is not but a blip. So I would say when I get back, an idea, I wouldn't say to do this, but if a student should think about how are they going to dovetail that experience at Peace Corps into a job maybe at USAID, maybe a job somewhere in the state, something that makes sense to what they did in Peace Corps, where that transition makes sense, and the committee then has that longer term interest, and they see the flexibility that the student and you introduced a priority agency. So there's a lot of strategy involved here, but it also makes sense. Do you ever ask students to report when they travel abroad? So the students are so the year of the 3 years of COVID, students have not been allowed to leave their country. So if you are in Estonia, you are not allowed to go visit, and even if it's a green country, you're not allowed to go across the border and visit Latvia or something like that, right? Or Finland. We are dropping a lot of those restrictions starting next cycle, starting summer. We're going to go back to pre-COVID rules, where basically the student would have to set up it will be on a case by case. We will still not let students go visit a blue country if it's still off limits to Boren. That makes sense. Like, you're not going to be able to go visit Russia. or even change planes in Moscow. That's generally speaking where people get picked up by FSB, so we avoid airports. This is going to be something that, again, case by case. That's a good question. Again, I keep saying real quick, but we're 37 minutes in. Examples of positions in federal government that I kind of showed you with those logos. You know, they're there. FEMA hires a ton of Boren. The important thing I tell students is that what they write in their SA2 about what they want to do in federal government, they show that long-term interest in being a foreign service officer. They talk about the cone. They talk about the other jobs they're going to do while looking for federal work. Now they get back from Boren, they're about to graduate, they start getting emails from the Boren service team, and FEMA has a job opening. They actually have 16 job openings all at once, and they want Boren to apply. They're going to take advantage of your hiring authorities. They know Boren are strong candidates. So they let Boren know, say, hey, send this message to all your Boren who still need to work for the Fed, that we are looking for folks. What you wrote in your SA2 is not a blood contract. You do not have to do what you said there. No one's going to look back and say, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. We just want you to work in the federal government. The whole purpose of this program is to get people with those international experiences, those language skills, into the federal government. And we don't really care where you go, as long as it has some sort of national security component to it. Because most people who get into the government, if they don't stay long-term for their career, they come in and out. And the $25,000 we're giving you is a good investment. At least the government is concerned. For the last 28 years, this is a strong investment, getting a better, more experience in the federal government and getting more diversity and all of this. So, I mean, that's why this program exists. I'm just looking for my mouse. There's one of those things where my mouse has now disappeared. There we go. Oh, there we go. Just to let you know, veterans are going to have a big bonus in the application. They get a big push. Veterans have a 49% acceptance rate since 2009, when I started tracking who was a vet who applied. 26% for our average applicant is still very high. I just want to remind people that we get about 200 awardees out of 800 applications on a strong year. Meaning strong, I get more applications than normal. This is definitely attainable program. State or local governments generally does not count toward your service. That was a good question as well. Again, what we do to help the students get work in the federal government, we have a service team. I work at the Institute of International Education. We are the administrators of the program, a nonprofit. I'm a government contractor, but I work at an NGO. So the folks who take over for Boren, once you finish your Boren Award, we hand you over to the government side, who are going to start sending you those job descriptions, who are going to send you information about what's out there. We will also bring you into DC for a 2-day seminar to help the students get ready for that job search, to talk about the background investigation again, to introduce them to agencies. We have a job fair of 20 to 30 agents and walk around and get to know agencies like FEMA and others that are looking and have hired Boren in the past. So these are the things we do. We do not guarantee a job in the federal government. We do our best to get your foot in the door, but ultimately it's the student's responsibility to apply, to interview, and to say yes or no to whatever job it is. So the student is never going to be forced to do something they don't want to do. A lot of students would love it if we just drop them in a chair. But unfortunately, that is not what we do here. Oops, went too far. Application requirements, we have a couple of essays. They're roughly 800 words each. Letters of recommendation, we only require 2 from the undergrads, 3 from the graduate students. Transcripts do not have to be official, but we would, as long as they're legible. What we're looking for, again, students that are meeting most of our preferences. Are they staying overseas as long as we would hope, 25 weeks or longer? Great. Is the country and language a preference? Great. You know, again, their major, I feel like that matters very little to the committee, but that is technically a preference. The realistic career goals, flexibility, all of these things are going to be what we look for in an application. And it is something that the committee will basically, we'll have a lot of qualified folks, and they're going to basically start nitpicking and be like, wait a minute, I'm not sure they made a clear answer to this, right? Because sometimes you just have to do that when you have only so many options, only so many spots. The deadline for the national deadline for the undergrads is February 1st. That's when they have to hit submit, 5 p.m. Eastern time. The national deadline for the graduate students is a week earlier, January 25th. The application is open. The earliest a student could go overseas would be the day after our orientation, which is June 3rd, 2023. A student can start their overseas program. If they're not doing our FLEAs, which is, we have dates for those, but if they're doing their own program through their school or something they built themselves, they can start anytime summer 2023 after June 3rd. They can start in fall 2023. Those are really when most of our programs begin. We would even go as late as March 1st, 2024, but I think stick to February, stick to the summer and fall. We are in a contract, so there are no guarantees for programs that start after funding after March 1st, 2024. So even though a student could apply for March 1st, 2024 through February 28th, 2025, and these numbers are getting crazy, they could get the award, and for whatever reason, the government runs out of money on this particular program. It's not guaranteed because of that particular time frame that they put down. That is mentioned in the application. So a student may see that and be like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? If it's between fall and spring and they're trying to decide which one they should do the fall, because then it's guaranteed if they are selected. Where if they're starting something in the spring, it's not as guaranteed. This is the first year we're doing it. We don't expect this to be an issue, but we have to tell you that this is a possibility. We haven't gotten to spring yet. So I am assuming the folks, we get less than 10% of our total Boren who start after January. So it's not a large number of Boren. I will see what happens this year. I don't expect it to be an issue, but again, we have to put it out there that because we're on this contract and our dates are kind of weird, we have to tell you. And the student probably would be like, they would probably notice in the application that it's not guaranteed. This is our contact information. If you're curious about your own campus and who is, if the information is there and if it's correct, and go check it out. You pull out your phone, you should be able to find this on our website. We are technically out of DC. Our office is moving. We have a 3-month window while we move from one office to right across the street. And for whatever reason, that takes 3 months. I'm not complaining. I'm in Maryland. I don't have to commute. Boren@iie.org is the best place to reach us. You can call me at 800-618-NCEP and dial 1 or extension 1. Nobody has a dial anymore. If you are looking for information, we've recorded. YouTube is probably our best bet. The other 3, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, they're all there just to get people to our website or learn more about the program. So you already know about the program now. YouTube will actually have webinars we've recorded, student things that are maybe a little more relevant. If you have any questions, this is the time. I used up almost all of the oxygen, but we have about 5 minutes left, and then I have a 2-hour presentation at 3, so got to save my voice.
Michael, thank you so much. While folks are typing their questions, I have 2 quick ones. For our advisors on the line who maybe don't have a campus representative, how would they become one if they wanted to be?
Send me an email. All you have to do is send an email at iie.org. I check first to see who's on our page, because your school may have one that's out of date. And you or they are the campus rep, you just didn't know, you don't know who they are because they're in some different area of the campus. Reach out to them and make sure, see what they're doing. A lot of the times they don't even know they're the campus rep, or the person was voluntold and then never followed up. So it is just double check with who's at your school, who's listed. If nobody's listed, then it's open. Just send me an email. I'll put you in there. Somebody asked about Russia and China. They are both listed on the Boren site as options for students, but oh yeah, no worries. So Russia and China, so Russia has been off limits for 8 years or more. You can apply to Russia, but you have to have an alternative program. Kazakhstan is really where most of our Russian speaking students are going. That's where the FLAGSHIP goes for their capstone. That's where Project Go goes. Almost everybody goes to Kazakhstan. Kyrgyzstan is a close second. Then it's Estonia, Latvia, Georgia. That's where people go to Russia. For China, China's green. it is eligible, but because it's Mandarin, and this is the same with Russian and Arabic, you have to have an alternative. We have not been able to send people to China for a couple of years, mostly because of COVID. So we've been just sending them to Taiwan. We've given them that option. They don't have to take it, but if they're interested in keeping the Boren, they can go to Taiwan, Singapore, or Malaysia. So those are the options we give. China, because they keep shutting down cities, we're worried about students getting stuck either out of China or in China. So we have been hesitant to go back right now, but we're hoping that all clears up by 2023. I almost said 2013. I'm living a decade in the past.
You're a classic, Michael. What can I say?
Yes, ma'am.
My last question, and I'm not seeing any others in the chat, but folks, please do use this great opportunity to pick Michael's brain. There's so many different possibilities, CLS, Fulbright, all of these things. Why should advisors steer great students towards Boren, and perhaps stress this one over others?
I think we always say they should apply to everything. A critical language student, a CLS applicant, generally speaking, would be a strong Boren as well. If they're a strong CLS, they're usually a strong Boren. We are happy to cost share with state when it comes to the student. So if I have a Boren who applied for a CLS and gets both, is accepted to both, generally speaking, we'll just say, hey, just do the CLS, and the next day, the day after your CLS ends, you can stay in country, and then if you'll officially be a Boren from that point, and we'll cover your costs from that point forward. And that gives you 2 opportunities to get funding. So we're happy about that. Loan forgiveness depends on the government agency, and like DOE, Department of Ed, had that famous kerfuffle about loan forgiveness. So I can't obviously guarantee anything. But loan forgiveness is part of a lot of federal agencies, a lot of programs, but it's so it's depending on the agency, even depending on the sub-agency. I don't know how that works. I know at IIE, if a student ended up working for Boren at IIE, it would count toward their service, and we have loan repayment as one of our benefits. But it depends on where you work. Good question.
And they've overhauled some of that public service loan forgiveness stuff too, with a new deadline of October 31. So maybe what was relevant a year ago is
spooky.
Totally changed now. Yes, spooky. Excellent.
Good job, John.
Well, thanks to all of our advisors for joining us, Michael. Thank you so much. I hope we will send some great students your way to participate in this program and advance U.S. interests and language capacity and international understanding. So.
And if you want me on your campus, or classroom, if you have I'm happy to zoom in and zoom out. I'm in the Maryland area. I'm a Terp for life. So just let me know, and I can visit, or at least virtually visit. You guys have a good day.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.